G'day, wonderful listeners. This is episode 62 of Trev's Talk, and I'm your host, Trev. Last week I left off after giving you, wonderful listeners, as much information as possible on the 10 secrets of Medjugorje. This week I want to let you know as much as I can on the Garabandal phenomenon, which occurred in a tiny mountain village in northern Spain between 1961 and 1965. Garabandal is one of those spiritual events that sits quietly in the background of Catholic consciousness. Not as widely known as Fatima or Medjugorje, yet deeply striking in its content, its urgency, and the innocence of the 4 young girls at the centre of it. The village itself was remote, simple, and almost untouched by the modern world at the time. And into that simplicity came a series of reported apparitions of the Virgin Mary under the title Our Lady of Mount Carmel, bringing messages that were both tender and deeply serious. The heart of Garabandal revolves around 3 major themes: a warning, a miracle, and a conditional chastisement. These weren't presented as secrets, but as public calls for the world to return to God before it was too late. The warning, according to the visionaries, would be a moment experienced by every person on earth, a kind of illumination of conscience where each soul sees itself as God sees it, not to punish, but to awaken. The miracle, they said, was a great sign of God's love to take place at the pines above the village, visible and permanent, and announced 8 days beforehand. And the chastisement, they said, would only come if humanity ignored the first 2 events. It would then be a consequence, not a desire of God. But Garabandal wasn't only about prophecy. It was also about the Eucharist, reverence, repentance, and the spiritual state of the Church. The messages repeatedly called people back to prayer, humility, and respect for the sacraments. And just like how the Medjugorje appearances have unfolded over many years, so has the Garabandal phenomenon unfolded over years, long enough to shape a generation of believers, long enough to leave a spiritual imprint that still stirs hearts today. However, some real similarities exist between Garabandal and Medjugorje. Both of those phenomenal events gave warnings, which included a kind of illumination of conscience, whereby everyone would be made aware of how God sees them and their behaviour. This should make a lot of people change their ways if they have been behaving in ways disappointing to God. Secondly, both phenomenal events promise supernatural signs to appear, and everybody will know that they come from God. Because these events are going to be announced several days before actually taking place, they will be well and truly covered by mainstream media. Huge crowds will have time to gather at both Garabandal and Medjugorje to witness the appearance of the promised supernatural signs. Our Lady at Medjugorje tells us that we need to turn to God now, not wait for the Garabandal and Medjugorje illumination of conscience to take place. Those who pass away without turning to God will be lost. Changing subjects, I do have news on the medical clearance required to obtain a private pilot's licence. As reported in episode 58, I had an appeal lodged with the Administrative Review Tribunal. I appealed on the grounds that the Aviation Authority, CASA, was being too harsh in banning me from a medical clearance due to a mental disability issue I had experienced 25 years previously. I lodged my appeal with a certificate from my personal doctor that I was totally controlled from the historical disability condition by medication I was fully compliant with. I was free of any side effects and was completely stable for all the years I had been under his care. Well, I had a phone conference with the ART people and some CASA people a few days ago. The ART people act as mediators and possibly conduct a hearing if mediation does not fix the impasse between me and CASA, the Aviation Authority. As I expected, CASA came to the conference ready for battle. They quoted all sorts of reasons why their decision to not grant me a medical clearance should stand. I realised my appeal stood no chance with them, so withdrew my appeal. That leaves me with my appeal to the Australian Human Rights Commission, as I mentioned in episode 58. The Human Rights Commission will rule on whether I have been discriminated against. There is law covering discrimination against people with disability. My mental disability of 25 years ago is fully controlled by medication, and I have the rights of every other Australian by law, or so I believe. Now, I must wait until the AHRC examines my circumstances and decides if I've been discriminated against. If that should be so, then I should be able to obtain a medical clearance to fly as I want to do. Looking on the AHRC website led me to read that they are extremely busy and can take up to a year to take on a new case. So there you go, once again it means I must wait. I definitely would have given up the idea of flying planes long ago if I had not experienced that future dream I had where I stood by a small plane in jaunty and confident mood because I passed the flying test. That dream encourages me to fight on until I secure my medical clearance to fly. Also, a couple of weeks ago, I attended a Catenians meeting, and while sitting at table eating a meal with some members, I was asked how the Scholarship Fund was progressing. I gave a very brief talk on how I was waiting on the Anglican and Catholic churches to hopefully come on board, and one committee member at the table, Michael, said if the churches don't work out, let me know, as the committee may help with a donation. At the same time, one other member, Peter, said to me, I will give you a donation of $1,000. Peter sees me regularly at our local church on Saturday evenings when I go to the weekend mass, and the next Saturday evening after the Catenians meeting, Peter gave me a cheque as he had promised. Just as the dream of passing the flying test made me fight on to get the medical clearance to fly, the donation talk from Catenians Michael and Peter makes me fight on to get the funds necessary to make the Scholarship Fund project a total success and improve the education of many Aboriginal students. Last episode, I mentioned that Anglican Bishop Kate suggested I meet the pastor at the Anglican Ascension Church in Midland. I was keen to do so, and on the next Friday, when I knew they had a 2-hour period of giving charity like food and clothing out to anyone needing help, I called into their parish hall and met Stuart, the pastor. Stuart told me about Indigo Junction, right next door, where the homeless could get a shower and wash their clothes. So I went there too and met Link, the manager. We swapped details of what we all did, as well as contact phone numbers, and look forward to finding how we can work together in future, helping those that need help. I now know where to direct any homeless people I come across. Well, wonderful listeners, we've come to the end of this episode. Please join me again next week. Shares and comments are great. This is Trev, tuning out.